Good evening, everybody. I'm Jan Rothenberg, and this is Good Karma Designs. My first guest tonight is Laurie Dubow, and I'm so thrilled to have Laurie. She is the owner and real estate broker for Paradise Realty International, your real estate concierge. Laurie brings a unique perspective to the current real estate market. Along with her real estate and mortgage expertise, she has an extensive background in counseling. She holds a master's degree in psychotherapy and a postmaster's in business administration. Laurie is a published real estate author and is known as the real estate concierge. She has the unique ability to consider the emotional, psychological, and financial factors in relation to buying and selling a home. Welcome, Laurie.
Thanks, Jan. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
I am so thrilled to have you. I've known Laurie for many years through our Women for Excellence group, and I'm just thrilled to have you on the show and talk about how you create good karma for your clients. Tell us a little bit about your interesting background and how you've taken that to enhance your real estate work.
Sure, I would love to. Well, growing up, my dad was a real estate attorney, so around the kitchen table, I used to hear about all of the trials and tribulations of real estate transactions.
Sure.
But I decided to take a different path, and I decided to go practice psychology. And after practicing psychology for about 15 years, I decided to transition into real estate. And that's another story for another day, maybe over a glass of wine.
Okay, wonderful.
But needless to say that what I'm doing now is really a culmination of over 35 years of experience with psychology, with business, with real estate, and with mortgage. And it really gives me a different perspective on real estate and real estate transactions.
I'm sure. I mean, what I know of you, Laurie, is you're so heartfelt, and you really look into all aspects of selling a home, not just get the sale done, but you take a total approach. Can you tell us a little more about that approach that makes you very specialized and makes you different than many other realtors out there?
Sure, I would love to. We call ourselves a real estate concierge, and basically what that means is that we provide old-fashioned service with the high-tech bells and whistles to really make the transaction everything that it can be. But what really makes us different is that we really believe that there's an emotional and psychological component to every real estate transaction.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that needs to be balanced with the financial and the procedural things which need to get done. But if you don't take into account the emotional and psychological factors, you're really doing yourself and your client a disservice. So we really believe in a heart-centered approach to real estate. And if you go back and look at movies over time, one of the movies that people think about the most is The Wizard of Oz. And even Dorothy, one of the most famous lines is when she clicks her little red heels and says, "There's no place like home."
It's true.
And I think even she realized that there's an emotional connection to home that you can't even put your finger on, but it's there. So I'm dealing with people most of the time during one of the most stressful times in their lives.
Absolutely.
There's very little that's more stressful than thinking about moving your home someplace else, taking all of your possessions and picking them up and moving. And you're thinking about, are they going to fit? Am I going to like the new home? Is everything going to work? There's so many factors going on, and that's under the best of circumstances.
Right.
Very often I'm dealing with people when they're not under the best of circumstances. It's a divorce, there's been a death, they're dealing with a foreclosure, a short sale. So I'm dealing with people under the most stressful of circumstances, and we honor that, and we respect that, and we try to help people balance all of the stressful things that are happening and the emotional and psychological things to help them make the best decision.
That's fantastic. So it sounds like you're using all your skill sets to help people, from your psychology background, your business background, all of these backgrounds, to really give a total package. And I know you offer mortgage services and design services and all kinds of services to help people make the move and the transition so much easier. And I totally relate to your philosophy. You and I have spoken about this. I do the insides of homes after people buy them. And I do believe that our homes create our best lives. And Laurie's firm is here to help them actually find that home, and then we can put in all the beautiful things and decorate it. But it must be in the right location, the right layout for the family, the right price point, payment plan. There's so many things that go into that factor before they actually get into the home.
That's correct.
Do you go through a step-by-step process to make that home purchase or sale, if you're listing, an easier process for your client? Do you put together information for them or statistics?
Absolutely. I think when somebody's making the decision whether to move or not, and sometimes I get people and they haven't made that decision yet. They're trying to,
They're on the
figure it out.
fence, stay or go.
Exactly.
Love it, list it.
Exactly. Love it or list it, just like the TV show. Exactly. So I don't always go in with the assumption that moving is the best thing. So I usually sit down and have a conversation with them and help them try to figure out, first of all, what is the emotional and psychological attachment to the home that they're leaving? Is it something that they want to stay in or want to go? And either way, at that point, we then decide, is it financially feasible to stay or is it financially feasible to go? And what can they afford? One of the things that makes us different is that most realtors or mortgage brokers are only going to look at principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. They're not going to take into account other factors that may be going on in your life.
Right.
For instance, do you have a child that you're trying to put through college or saving up for college? That's not going to show up on a credit report, but you need to leave money for that.
You have to plan for these contingencies.
Correct. Do you like to travel? Some people like to take a big vacation. Well, you need to plan for that. So those are all things that we try to take into account when we're looking at the big picture of what someone can afford. In addition to that, when you're talking about good karma, there's not much that's worse for good karma than moving into a house and having the roof leak a week after you've moved in,
or
especially if you don't have money.
Yes.
So one of the other things we looked at is, what does the person or people have for reserves? Do they have money for repairs? If they don't have money for repairs, we're not going to take them to try to find a house with an older roof.
Right.
We're going to need a house with a new roof and new appliances. So those are all things to take into account that maybe an average realtor or an average mortgage broker might not take into account, but they're very important.
Yes.
And that's where you come in addition to that, because another thing that makes us different is that we set up a team.
Yes.
And that
I love
I
that
can't do it
approach.
myself. And we're very successful at what we do and helping people, but we can't do it ourselves. So we need to have a good attorney, a good inspector, a good appraiser, a good designer, somebody that can come in and help the person prepare a place to get it ready to move, or help them once they've moved to make the house as comfortable as possible and take into account all their needs. And that's what makes you special as well.
Well,
that's why we're a good team.
Yes, it's a total approach that you have
Yeah.
to the real estate process. And I just love it. It's a small boutique firm, and really you just take such a personal interest in your clients. Can you share with us any of your proud moments, any of your success stories?
Sure. Well, I think I'm not going to share one success story in particular, but what I will say is, very often when people find out that my background is in psychology, they're curious and they say to me, how could you go from a helping profession to what you're doing now?
Big change.
And I look at them and I say, oh my goodness, I help so many more people now than I ever could have through practicing psychology.
Wow.
Because this really is a culmination of all of my experience. And again, as we discussed, I'm dealing with people during a very stressful time, and by being considerate of that and mindful of that and helping people to really look at the big picture, I'm dealing with people in the most personal way that I possibly can. There's very little that's more personal than your home. So
It's extremely personal.
I'm still practicing psychology.
Absolutely.
In so many ways.
Absolutely.
But I'm doing it in a more comprehensive way that really makes a difference to people. And I've been at a closing table where both the buyer and the seller were crying out of happiness.
Oh, wow.
Because of what we were able to accomplish, because it was such a long journey
That's
to get
success.
from contract to closing, or to get from the
Right.
first time somebody comes to me until closing. And when you're sitting at a closing table and the buyer and seller are crying out of happiness because they couldn't have done this without you, you know that you've really changed lives and impacted a whole family or two whole families. And there's really very little more fulfilling than that. that
That
makes
is
it all
so
worthwhile.
amazing. I love hearing that story, and I can't wait to list my house with you when the time is
Oh,
right.
thanks.
How can our viewers best reach you, Laurie?
Okay, sure. You can reach me at Laurie@myparadiserealty.com. That's my email address, and that's LAURIE at myparadiserealty.com, or my phone number is 561-929-3329, or my website, www.myparadiserealty.com, and that's where you can reach our whole team.
Well, thank you for coming here today, Laurie. It was a pleasure having you at Good Karma.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Okay.
And thank you. Stay tuned for our next guest.